If I were to tell you that we are looking at not only one of the fastest, but simply put the fastest notebook in most categories in our database ever, you would probably expect something like the MSI Titan 18HX or Alienware's massive M80. Or, since we talk about the gaming notebook, something super flashy with vents, exhausts, gamer bling and RGB everywhere. But you would be wrong. The XMG Neo 16 we are dealing with today is actually quite different, and I must admit I really like this puppy a lot. While it's not exactly super portable, the relatively slim 16-inch all-metal body is relatively sleek and quite compact, despite the insane computing grunt slumbering below the subtle dark grey chassis. While you do get some RGB if you want to, this could also be the perfect workstation sleeper for the office. And if you see some red flags right away when you hear insane performance and slim chassis and expect a notebook that asks for noise cancelling headphones while gaming, well, the Neo 16 has some more aces up its sleeves and can also be the quietest gaming notebook you have ever experienced. Let's get into it. In terms of specs, the Neo 16 shares its core components with other high-end gamers on the market today, but you can already spot some differences upon closer inspection. While the i9-14900HX is quite common in 2024, a max TDP of more than 200 watts isn't, and it already gives us a small hint about what the stealthy gamer is really capable of. To get an adequate amount of frames to the QHD+ 240Hz IPS panel, we get of course a laptop RTX 4090 running at up to 175 watts and 32 gigs of RAM and a 1TB SSD for now. I am saying for now since we can't just have the fastest laptop ever sit around with such a modest storage and memory configuration, but more on that later. When it comes to the overall build quality and aesthetics, a lot has changed compared to last year's Neo 16. And while that one wasn't a badly made laptop, the 2024 version is on a completely different level. First of all, we get a full metal chassis with hardly any flex, all around stiff hinges and super clean looks with only minimal branding. Port selection is also pretty okay. On the left there is a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 and a USB-C of the same standard. On the right, another pair of USB-A 3.2 Gen 1s and a full-size SD card reader with average transfer rates. And in the back you get your HDMI 2.1, 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet and a USB-C Thunderbolt 4 together with the power connector. Back here you can also find the connectors for the optional water cooling add-on, which is XMG's 2nd Gen Oasis. It's basically something like an external AIO which you can hook up to your shiny new laptop in a matter of seconds. For 2024 they redesigned the connector on the laptop side, and while they were held in place magnetically before, you now get an additional pin making the connector even more secure. All the ports are self-sealing, meaning that when you disconnect the Oasis from the Neo, there's mostly, if at all, just a tiny little drop of water making it out of the loop. Setting everything up is also a walk in the park and very well documented on XMG's part. And while they do strongly recommend draining the water left in the laptop after disconnecting it, I did multiple commutes without draining and never had any problems or even a leak whatsoever. For game downloads and the occasional Zoom meeting, we measured below average wireless transmits and pretty good numbers on the receiving end. While the Windows Hello enabled 2-megapixel webcam delivers, well, gaming laptop results. But let's talk maintenance. If you have never heard of XMG before, they are a sort of boutique laptop manufacturer. They use bare bones as a base for their products and then put them together according to your order. To that extent, you can fully customize the Neo 16 to your heart's content on their website. And to demonstrate the capabilities of the powerful 16-incher, we kitted it out with a pair of Samsung 990 Pros with 4TB each for a whopping 8TB in a freaking laptop. We also upgraded the memory config to 64 gigs, which is the max you can do if you want to maintain the faster memory frequency of 5600 megatransfers a second. However, if you're willing to drop it down to 5200, you can also easily do 96 gigs, which would be my preferred config when using this as a workstation for our videos. While you can no longer get the Neo 16 with a mechanical keyboard, the new switches are also doing a fantastic job with solid travel, a clear pressure point and a clean layout. The touchpad is also pretty good as well, but as always, this sort of offset position personally drives me nuts. But this is of course highly subjective. XMG is of course a smaller brand compared to the industry's heavyweights when it comes to laptops, which means their options when sourcing displays are also quite limited. So it might be some time before we see any of their laptops being offered with mini LED or OLED screens. That said, the 240Hz panel is by no means a bad screen, you just have to manage your expectations. So while the screen does really well with around 500 nits of brightness, contrast and color gamut coverage are only average. Response times are really snappy though, and this being a standard IPS makes PWM a non-issue. But enough with the chit-chat, let's talk performance, and boy is there a lot to talk about. In our CPU testing, the Neo 16 benefits from its simply insane power levels, and while there is a steady decline in our prolonged tests, and when stressing the i9 across all its cores, it still levels out with numbers other contenders are only starting at to begin with. You may think that comparing the Neo 16 to the competition is not exactly fair since it's the only water-cooled laptop in our testing. But well, these numbers are from the Neo running solely on air, and it's still able to top our CPU performance rating with ease. And we are not just talking about 16-inch notebooks here, but even the 18-inch flagships cannot really beat the XMG. Attaching the Oasis results only in a very marginal performance boost, but it allows the 16-incher to keep up its initial performance figures, and it reduces heat and especially noise tremendously, but more on that later. In our system performance tests, the Neo only has to yield to the SCAR 17 with AMD's X3D mobile flagship. And even subjectively, you will not find a lot that this puppy cannot handle. I've been daily driving it for a little while now as my desktop replacement, powering the AOC PD49 I have on my desk right now. And by the way, a review for this one is coming very soon as well. And in combination with the Oasis and the more than generous RAM and storage config, it's one of the best workstation and gaming notebooks I've used for quite a while. Being able to have all of your files on the notebook itself is a godsend, especially when dealing with all of our video data for the channel. And I really forgot how convenient it is to not constantly having to mess around with a bunch of external hard drives. The Oasis also removes one of the biggest pain points when it comes to these super high-end notebooks coming with 4090s and fast i9s. I mean, it's still audible, but while working in Resolve for example, it's just a slight hum that never bothered me personally. And while gaming on this ultra-wide beauty, well, it's a game changer. And while the setup may seem cumbersome, you can still easily disconnect the Neo from the water cooler in a matter of seconds and move it around your place without a problem, or just chuck it in your backpack and be good to go. But again, XMG recommends to drain the laptop before you leave the house, which you should definitely do when you get on a plane or something. In our synthetic GPU rating, the Neo 16 is once again sitting on top, benefiting from the higher than average power levels for the CPU, in addition to the 175 watts for the RTX 4090. Even in the much more CPU-bound Firestrike, only the 18-inch competition can keep up, and adding the Oasis can tip the scales once more in the XMG's favor. In our gaming rating, a combination of older games tested in 1080p, once again only the AMD X3D equipped SCAR 17 can set itself apart. While the sleek 16-incher is able to best everything the competition has to offer with ease. In something more recent, the differences are pretty massive compared to other 16-inch high-end notebooks, and more in line with results from the 18-inch behemoths we have tested so far. In general, the Neo 16 can run pretty much everything with above or close to 60 FPS in its native QHD resolution. And with DLSS and frame generation, even 4K or more exotic resolutions like the PD49 Super Ultra Wide are not a big problem as well. In addition, this one with the Oasis can also be the perfect game console alternative for your 4K TV, since you get all of the performance with minimal noise. Speaking about noise, without the water cooler and in the Neo's higher performance modes, we do not really have to mince words here. It gets very audible, and we are seeing numbers more or less in line with the competition. Under light loads, the Neo 16 is generally very well behaved. We just noticed some electronic noises every now and then, which did not bother me personally, but it's still something you should be aware of. To give you a more subjective impression, I recorded some noise samples across different workloads and power levels with and without the Oasis. And for more in-depth information about the Neo stress test and temperature behavior, please have a look at our written review on the website. You may have guessed it from the performance figures you have seen. The Neo 16 is supposed to live on your desk and will hardly be your all-day companion away from the wall. But almost 6 hours in our Wi-Fi standard test is definitely not too bad and allows for some light work when being out and about. Alright folks, it's about time to wrap it up. I've actually just two more or less major gripes with the Neo 16. The first one being its display. But this is also a little bit of a "it depends" situation. While I would love to get a more eye-candy experience for games and videos, I mostly use my notebooks for video editing, which does not really ask for higher than sRGB color space coverage. And it actually makes the Neo 16 kind of perfect, because I do not have to deal with different color profiles and all that jazz when I want to grade our videos. That said, experiencing story games on the Plate 16's OLED or the SCAR 16's Mini LED is definitely a much nicer experience. My second problem is ports, but this also mostly comes from using this as a desktop replacement in my particular setup. But on a machine of this price, I would have wished they would upgrade the USBs to 3.2 Gen 2 across the board and give the second USB-C a DisplayPort signal as well, to make the Neo 16 a bit more flexible with more advanced setups. But that's basically it. Everything else about this one is simply awesome and I really like it a lot. The chassis is well put together and can easily sit amongst other premium options available today. And it's actually quite portable for the amount of performance it packs and, well, performance. Having that much pure computing grunt at your disposal in such a package is definitely something else. And then there's the added benefit of XMG's water cooling solution, which almost completely eliminates the biggest pain point of super fast notebooks today, which is definitely fan noise. So yeah, if you're looking for a stealthy gamer, a high-end workstation or a little bit of both, well, do not sleep on the 2024 XMG Neo 16. But as always, let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments below. That should be it for today. Thanks a ton for watching. Do not forget to hit that like and sub button on your way out. My name is Alex, you have been fantastic and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.